Today, we're shining a light on cystic fibrosis, a life-altering condition that affects thousands of people and their families. This show is dedicated to raising awareness, sharing personal stories, and providing valuable insights into managing life with cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder that impacts the lungs and the digestive system. We'll discuss the challenges of diagnosis, the importance of early intervention, and how lifestyle choices can make a significant difference. We want to empower you with the knowledge you need to support yourself or your loved ones. Hello and welcome to Healthy Connections. I'm Annetta Wilson, your host. Healthy Connections is a show dedicated to exploring a wide variety of topics, from prenatal care to Alzheimer's disease. And we do so with a wide variety of perspectives, from the professionals that help treat the syndromes to everyday people like you and me who may have personal experience dealing with these topics on a first-hand basis. Stay tuned for Healthy Connections. Dr. Mark Weatherly with Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children, Pulmonary and Sleep Medicine, downtown Orlando, is here to start our discussion about cystic fibrosis. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here today.
Now, you are a pediatric pulmonologist. Tell us what that means.
Right, I'm a pediatrician, trained in pediatrics, and then I did further training in lung diseases.
And this is a disease of the lungs. And we were talking a little earlier before the camera started rolling that it's a normal screening for newborns.
Right. Fortunately, about 17 years ago, we started screening newborns for it in the state of Florida, so we can identify infants at a young age, usually less than a month of age, and follow them closely from that early point.
So describe and define cystic fibrosis. How does that disease manifest?
Right, so it's a genetic disease, so it's inherited, and it affects a protein that the body makes that helps regulate the mucus in your lungs and some of your digestion. So these babies, if they have the disease untreated, can have lung symptoms like cough, recurrent pneumonia, or wheezing. And they also usually have problems with malnutrition. They don't digest their food very well.
So they lose weight rather than gain weight?
Yes, absolutely.
It's genetic. Are there some groups that are more prone than others?
There are. Original mutation was from Europe, but it's widespread now through the world. And so that's why all babies are screened for it, because regardless of their origin, there's a chance of them having either the carrier status or the disease.
So what's the treatment like? Let's say a child is diagnosed, then what happens from your standpoint moving forward?
Right, well, first we meet with the family, of course, and explain the diagnosis and the plan. There's a lot of focus on nutrition when they're young, because that's an early time to intervene and make a difference long term. And now it's good to know that there's an update kind of to that. If you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, I'd say we start some inhaled medications and we get ready to treat with antibiotics if there's infections and things like that. But now we have some medication that can be started in some kids, depending on the form of the gene they have, as young as 7 months of age. That's given by mouth.
And how does that impact the child's lifestyle, school, activities? What happens to this child moving forward?
Right. So they still have to take some medications on an ongoing basis, for example, to help their digestion. So they take some pills, some capsules when they eat. They'd have to have those at school or when they're adults. They have to take a pill at least twice a day that helps fix the defective protein that makes a big difference in their health. And they may need some supplements of some vitamins, and periodically, if they get sick, like a cold that you or I might get, they might get a little sicker and they might need some antibiotics or something like that.
You said it's genetic. Is there a screening process for parents? You know, how would you know if you may have a child who has cystic fibrosis?
Right, great question. And it's not a standardized process for adults. It's going to become that way, I think, because the kids are aging up, right, since they started screening. But a woman expecting a baby could ask her obstetrician to do the test to see if she's a carrier for this disease.
Have you ever, do you think the research is going to the point where you can start treating these children in utero?
It's being looked at,
Okay.
either that way or having perhaps the mom take the medication so that it's transferred to the infant. So there's definitely being investigated. It's very cool research.
What are you most excited about, you know, as it relates to cystic fibrosis and the trends? You said if I had asked you a question 5 years ago, the answer would have been very different.
Right. So it's very cool. I've been in the field taking care of children with cystic fibrosis for over 30 years. And
so you know what you're doing.
Well, I've seen a lot of kids, and I see so much better outcomes now and such a better quality of life for the children. And now we have adult cystic fibrosis care centers because we expect all our children to become adults.
And what happens at those places?
They continue the care that we do for them as a child, but now when they're 18, 20, 21, they have other healthcare needs that are better met in an adult care facility.
What questions should parents ask their pediatrician?
So I would say if they had a child with recurrent respiratory infections, some recurrent wheezing, or trouble gaining weight, a younger child, that they would want to ask their pediatrician about that, and this is something they could investigate.
The research, I'm sure you keep up with what's going on. Is there something that gets you going, yes, let's hurry up with that one?
Right, so what we have now is really amazing, but it's only for about 90% of the patients with CF, because it's very specific to the type of the gene they've inherited.
Okay.
So there's about 10% left that we haven't quite hit the right combination yet. So we're excited to see the new things coming for that last group of the population of people with CF.
And does do the strides that have been made make your job easier? And if so, how?
Oh, absolutely. And I've often referred to, the amount of time we'd spend before because so many of our patients were sick and recurrently, but now it's a pleasure to see them for visits when they've usually been well, and it's almost boring. How have you been? I've been fine. Well, great. Keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
and we do some testing, and it's all fine. So it's a great thing because I lived through the time when it wasn't
When
boring.
it wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
So any words of wisdom to someone who's watching and may have some questions?
So if you want to know more about it, there's a great website from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and it's simply cff.org. And it's a great website for both learning about research, learning about signs and symptoms for people with the disease. It's a wealth of information.
And I'm sure it makes your job easier when you have parents who come in informed and can help you do what you do.
Absolutely. It's the ideal physician-patient relationship, right? To have an informed discussion, make recommendations, they're on the same page and on board, and it's great.
Dr. Weatherly, thank you for all the work that you do for the little ones to help them grow into big ones.
Of course.
And when we come back, we're going to learn more about the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Don't miss it. Whenever we talk about a disease or a condition, it's natural to want to know, well, what's being done? Well, we're going to answer that question now with Ryan Reed, who is the Executive Director of the West Florida chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. He's here to talk about what they do and what's on the horizon. Thanks for being with us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Annetta. Appreciate it.
So talk a little bit about what the foundation actually does.
Well, Annetta, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is committed to finding a cure for cystic fibrosis and providing all people with CF the opportunity to lead long, fulfilling lives. And to do that, we're aggressively funding research and drug development. We're advancing high quality specialized care and partnering with and advocating for the CF community.
Okay, how do you partner and advocate? And we're going to get back to the other two,
Sure.
but how does that partnership advocacy piece play out?
Well, we have a accreditation. We accredit care centers throughout the state of Florida. There are 24 in the state of Florida, and we work very closely with them and their clinical teams to ensure that our local CF patients are getting the kind of care that they deserve and can benefit from. On the advocacy front, obviously access to care and a lot of specialized issues come to the surface that impact CF patients and caregivers. And we partner with our volunteers to talk to policymakers, both at the state and federal level, to make sure that things are not falling through the cracks and our patients and caregivers are getting the access to care that they need.
So what are you most excited about in that area right now?
Well, we've made really good progress in access to care, really getting in front of policymakers and really creating a force with our volunteers so our policymakers understand what the issues are and they can help us and be a partner with us in resolving some of these issues. CF is a very specialized disease. It impacts about 1,600 people in the state of Florida and 40,000 nationwide. So these are very unique circumstances that these patients and caregivers face. And we really need help from our policymakers to advance the things that we're trying to advocate for.
So what can the average citizen do to help
Well,
you in that effort?
We are always looking for volunteers locally. These are folks who can become advocates and have a voice in the fight against CF. And we really are growing that network, both through our local events and for folks who want to get involved, not only through advocacy, but helping us out with special events, learning more about the cause, and really being a partner with us to get us across the finish line. I mean, it's really been a tremendous period, a transformational period in the fight against cystic fibrosis.
What
The
makes
last 10 years
what
have
makes
been
it
amazing.
transformational? That's an interesting
So,
word.
you go back about a decade or so, there was no treatment for the underlying cause of cystic fibrosis. In 2012, we had a breakthrough drug called Kalydeco that we'd co-developed with Vertex. And since then, over the course of the next decade or so, there have been 4 additional home run drugs. Back in 2012, when Kalydeco came out, we could help about 5% of the population with CF with a treatment, a medication that would dramatically improve their quality of life. Since then, that number is up to around 90%.
Wow.
So those advancements, it's really changed the game in terms of treatment for cystic fibrosis in the CF population. We couldn't be more ecstatic about that. But with that said, there's still about 10% of our patients that don't benefit from one of those revolutionary drugs. And we are not going to leave anyone behind. So both in the lab, on the advocacy front, and in the community, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that there's a cure, a one-time cure for each and every person who has cystic fibrosis. To see how it's really just changed the game. Some of these folks now lead perfectly normal lives. They can do things that were just unheard of before with the CF community. Go to college, get married, have families. These were things that folks simply didn't think were possible even 15, 20 years ago.
And I'm assuming that contributions and research help to have those success stories.
Absolutely. And we rely on our donors. Every $5 and $10 and $100 donation that we get through our walks or cycle events or galas, that's fueling that kind of progress. And simply, it wouldn't have been possible without that army of donors and volunteers that are helping get us towards the finish line.
If you had to highlight a gap, someplace you'd like to see more attention very quickly, where would that be?
I mean, I think the gap sometimes is in access to care, simply because folks don't understand the unique needs of the CF population. And, for us to build that network of folks who can educate policymakers, elected officials on what those needs are, I think that's really going to advance the ball forward quicker. And that's something that we're working on. Again, we can trumpet all the progress in the world. And certainly, we refer to it as the greatest story in modern medicine because it is, but it's all for naught, unless we can help each and every person that's impacted with CF. And that's what we're here to do.
Well,
One of our slogans is "Until it's done." And I think that really perfectly encapsulates, what we're here to do. I mean, we're not going to leave anyone behind.
If
We're here
your
to finish the fight.
enthusiasm is any indication, it's going to get done.
We're going to get there, but we need everyone's help. And I appreciate opportunities like this so folks can understand where we're at and where we need to get to.
Well, thank you for being with us, Ryan, and Godspeed on all of the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Annetta.
We will be right back. Don't go away. It is always exciting to do shows where we hear about good news and strides being made to conquer some of the diseases we cover. And cystic fibrosis is one of those. Thank you for joining us and helping those affected by this disease make healthy connections.